Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 185, recording on Friday, July 24th. The guest for you today is Kevin Seifert, the Vikings beat writer for ESPN, who has done this job at an incredibly high level for a long, long time. Believe I had him last year throughout the summer or leading into training camp, and it was a fun conversation. Always have respect, I would say, for the way Kevin does the job, the way he views what the job requires. And so, it was awesome to kick around the subjects that you guys are obviously curious about, most specifically the quarterback competition and quarterback play for the 2026 season. So we got into it, went in depth on it, and it was a conversation I think you guys will enjoy. Appreciate Kevin hopping on. If you're new here and watching on YouTube, I'm Alec Lewis. I cover the Vikings for The Athletic. Please hit the subscribe button below, hit the like button as well. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, please give us 5 stars. Follow us on those feeds. We're going to be coming at you a lot over the next few weeks to bring you everything that I see and hear, being at training camp in Eagan, Minnesota. So without further ado, here is Kevin Seifert of ESPN. All right, Kevin, welcome back to the show. I think you were on maybe last year before training camp, so making it tradition. How I haven't seen you in a while since we were out there for OTAs. How's the summer been? Did you get a chance to not think about the team that I think we think about probably more than we should?
It was good. No, it was a solid month or so away from the scene of work. But, I used to try to get away from it entirely, but then I realized I kind of like football and I like to know what's going on. And I don't necessarily want to, be tied down to writing and working on it every day. But, I haven't gotten away from it. I'm still keeping up with everything and interested in all the different things that have happened, both with the Vikings and league wide. And, so I reached a point in my career where I stopped apologizing for that and just say, hey, a lot worse things to do than to be, messing around with football.
That's interesting. I'm in the phase where it's like, I feel like I owe it to the people around me to try to act like I am not tethered to it, but maybe I shouldn't be that way.
Well, after a couple of years, they'll be like, no, go back to football. It's fine. You don't have to spend this much time around us. So.
That's probably the absolutely correct approach. I'll start with 2 things I want to talk about. First, leading into this specific training camp, how would you describe your emotions knowing the, I guess, attention probably that's going to be on all of this over the next few weeks?
I'm excited. It's you want to have interesting things to write about and to talk about and to watch. And we definitely are going to have that on multiple levels and not just the quarterback situation. I'm a little bit leery of the extent to which it's going to be dramatized nationally. Just because it's very rare to have a genuine, at least professed quarterback competition. I think the only other one will really be in Cleveland, which, I wouldn't say is a national market. But because it's Shedeur Sanders and because it's Deshaun Watson, they're going to get a lot of attention too. But, and I don't know nationally how people are viewing it and whether they think there's actually a legitimate competition happening here or not. But until the people in charge announce a winner, it's going to be covered as if there's a possibility that either J.J. McCarthy or Kyler Murray could be the week 1 starter. And so that in itself, and all the tentacles that come down with that, are really fun and interesting. And I hope we locally don't get caught up in what is likely to happen nationally in terms of the dramatics of it. But in terms of the implications and the meaning behind it, it's pretty deep.
Yeah, I think I told my parents a couple weekends ago, I'm ready to roll and excited. And I think they're like, you're nuts, or maybe you'll be regretting that in 2 weeks. But I also think part of it, and you correct me if you think I'm wrong, but just the well-known nature of both of these 2 guys and I don't know if it's polarity, but the opinions that people have about Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy. And it's opinions from fans. It's opinions from people like who have watched both of them within the league, like the opinions range for both those guys. And I think when you stack that on top of a team that is expected to be in it and win games, and you stack that on top of Justin Jefferson being present, all of that, you're probably going to get, to your point, some dramatics nationally and understandably, I think.
Yeah, and J.J. McCarthy brought with him, and there's other players like this over the recent history of the league, brought with him a big fan base. And I've always said, like, if you go to Michigan and you win a national championship and you're the quarterback and you have the kind of personality that he has, you're going to have a lot of people who will swear by you and follow you anywhere. And rightfully so, if you're a Michigan fan or a Big Ten fan that's not an Ohio State fan, I guess, you're going to be thrilled with him. And so there's a lot of people who are rooting heavily for him, some rationally and some frankly not, but that's the nature of it. And that adds another layer to it. It's not like it's two unknown guys going at each other. I mean, you have the former number 1 overall pick in the draft and a guy that, in Kyler Murray, and then a guy with J.J. McCarthy who has a very big, loyal fan base, and a lot of Vikings fans who have been pining for generations for them to draft and develop a long-term starter, and for lots of different reasons that we all know it has never worked out, and they are not willing to accept, and nor should they accept yet that it's not going to work out in this case either.
I'm going to throw you a curveball related to that, then we'll get back to it. You've covered the team for a long time. Like, what is the closest, and I'm putting you on the spot with this, what is the closest you feel like you felt to, like, they've found the franchise guy? Like, if you think about the arc of you covering this team, just because I mean, there's a curiosity for me of just, you think about all the names and all of the layers and the decades of searching and sometimes finding somewhat of a short-term, probably more short-term bridge. Like, when you think about that question, was there a time where you're like, this is probably going to be the guy for this team, this organization? I
mean, the closest would be Dante Culpepper, who was a 1999 draft pick and was a starter basically from 2000 to like 2005 or so, I think, before he had his big knee injury. And I was so new to football and the beat at that time that it hadn't even occurred to me that how rare it was to even just to have a guy for 5 years. And he was, there were years where he was not a guy that you thought was going to become a perennial Pro Bowl player. And then I think it was in 03 or 04 where I think he finished like second in Offensive Player of the Year voting to Peyton Manning and just had an unbelievable year, and half of the year was with Randy Moss hurt. And so you said, okay, this guy actually, he's got all the physical skills and he's putting it together from a schematic standpoint too. And then he goes and gets all 3 ligaments in his knee torn up in the 05 season. And so that I remember watching him walk off the field and saying, wow, there's a lot more than just one significant player walking off the field right now. Like there's a lot of history here and a lot of future implications here. Same way I felt when Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles in Green Bay, thinking about all the implications of that injury as well. So, I've always said the Vikings are in a multi-decade search for the replacement to Fran Tarkenton, and he was in the 70s, and Tommy Kramer was a starter for a long time, but it was not at the same level from a play standpoint as Fran Tarkenton, obviously. So it's been multiple generations of people waiting on this, and that was probably the closest in my time. But even then, it was shortened by the injury.
And I talked about this. I had Judd on the show 2 weeks ago, Judd Zolgad, and we were just talking about like the psychology of that, the psychology of like the fan base essentially yearning for that guy who makes every fall, every weekend something that you look forward to and feeling like you have a chance and you will be in the dance, and like how much that fuels or I'd say just like is dispersed within fan sentiment about certain players or or the situation entirely. And I find that part of it, I told Judd this, like I find that part of it as much as anything so interesting and understandable, really, like frankly, because when you look at, I mean, I lived in Kansas City when they drafted Patrick Mahomes and saw the arc of how it changed that franchise and that city, frankly. So I get it.
Yeah. And really you have to think about it in Minnesota / upper Midwest terms. You have to sort of juxtapose it with Green Bay and how they went from one Hall of Famer to another. And so basically for almost, 30 years, the Packers fans, for the most part, went into every season thinking they had a chance to go, because it was evident pretty quickly that Favre was going to be special, and evident pretty quickly that Aaron Rodgers was going to be special. We can only look back now and say they were both clearly Hall of Fame guys, but there was never a time when you didn't know, or without much time when you didn't know if Brett Favre was going to work out, or you didn't know if Aaron Rodgers was going to work out. So they had basically around 30, 3 decades, 30 years of fans knowing that. And over that time, from 92 or 93 or whenever Brett Favre got to Green Bay until the time that Aaron Rodgers left Green Bay, the Vikings were cycling through all of these, short-term answers. And frankly, it's possible that they're in that again, with Kyler Murray. Yeah. If Kyler Murray has whatever kind of year he has, he's not signed beyond this. And so there's no guarantee that this is going to be something the start of something long term, nor is there any guarantee it would be with JJ. And so when you not only do you have those situations, but you juxtapose it against the team that is your biggest rival from a Viking standpoint. I don't know if Green Bay thinks of it that way, but the Minnesota certainly does. Then it kind of makes it a little extra hard to swallow.
Totally makes sense. I was thinking about this last night, and I'm sure next week or whenever we'll talk to Justin Jefferson, and he was on Kevin Clark's podcast. This is Football. Thought it was a great, it was classic Justin. He was very, sharp, personable, the way he typically is. And he's gotten very good, I would say, from my lens of talking about this quarterback situation in a way that does not create any reaction or rash response. And so I'd say just watching that, listening to that show got me thinking, how much of a say should he specifically have in this? How much of a say do I expect him to have in this? I'd be curious what you think on those questions. And I obviously have some thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Our first quick break, and I want to talk about our presenting sponsor, First Resource Bank. They are a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area, run by really, really, really good people. Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson. I was out at the 3M Open on Thursday afternoon with Aaron and a bunch of their business partners, and that's really the type of bank it is. They love being out in the community. They love connecting with people of all certain areas of business, and they are huge Vikings fans. So you want to walk into a branch that has people that are really easy to work with. They can make it really quick and easy to set up an account, to grab a cashier's check, whatever you need. And then you also want to talk Vikings with people who are locked into this team. I cannot say enough about First Resource Bank. They've been a part of the show now for more than probably a year and a half, and incredibly grateful for their support. The show is also sponsored by Pro MN Athletics. So few years ago, 3 guys came together, Kurt, Graham, and Tanner. Tanner being Tanner Morgan, former Gophers quarterback. And they are we love football. We love the Minneapolis region and the Minnesota region. And we want this sport and this place to be as good as it can possibly be. So what can we do to give back? Well, what they've done is pour into a bunch of youth here in this entire state. They have winter academies, summer 7-on-7 events. Tanner is helping quarterbacks privately, some of the best quarterbacks in the state. And so if you have a son or you have friends who have kids who love playing football, who want to be really good, who want to play in middle school or high school or even college, I just cannot recommend checking out what Pro MN has to offer. Because it's not only you're not only working with people like Tanner who know what it takes to get to a certain level, but you're also working with guys who are really just invested in lifting the tide of the sport here locally. So, awesome to partner with those guys. And with that, let's get back to the show with Kevin Seifert of ESPN.
I mean, they would be smart the Vikings would be smart. And by say Vikings, I mean Kevin O'Connell, because it's mostly or all his decision, would be smart to take very careful notes of how Justin is melding with each guy, and like how it looks when Kyler Murray throws to him, and how it looks when JJ McCarthy's throwing to him, and maybe getting some kind of like secondhand thoughts of what he's saying behind the scenes, or maybe kind of just have an ongoing conversation, not asking him who do you want, but like what do you think, how did it go today? So like it'd be silly for them not to like pay attention to that, because that's going to be such a big part of the success for who it is. But the interesting thing about JJ though, like he has a very like nice and pleasant way of JJ meaning Justin Jefferson, is a very nice and pleasant way of talking. But I thought he kind of put McCarthy on blast in his own way earlier in the offseason, where he basically said, this is his time to either step it up or spend it, take a step back, and like for him, like that was it wasn't a shot. It wasn't saying I don't think you can do it. It wasn't saying you're no good. It was saying like, this is the big leagues. This is what happens in the big leagues when you don't perform at the level you're supposed to. And so you have one of two choices, and it's up to you which direction you're going to go in. And so for him, like I thought that was, relatively direct, and he kind of said something along that lines to Kevin Clark the other day, but it's clear from a personal standpoint, he likes him and like is rooting for him and doesn't have like a grudge against one guy or like a personal favorite for another. But like he's not a mercenary. Like I think he genuinely wants Minnesota to win a Super Bowl, but he wants the best quarterback to play. And like I'm guessing that's what he will be advocating for from a very organic standpoint the whole way through.
Yeah, I also think this spring there was, and it might have been the same day that he made those other comments that you referenced, where he was talking about like the fastballs thrown and the difficulty that JJ had in last season of layering the football. And that's something we've learned. I've joked like I felt like we took a course in quarterback play last year, but I genuinely did learn a lot about what it's required to play the position well at this level. And that dynamic of being able to get the ball up and down into windows, into voids and vacancies, as Kevin O'Connell will say, like that wasn't something, just wrote or threw out there. Like Justin Jefferson validated that as a priority. And I thought that was notable as well.
Yeah, he did. And Justin actually went back. Justin said that when JJ was a rookie too, when we were I think there was like, it wasn't a long time when JJ was a rookie during training camp before he got hurt, but there was maybe like one interview session with Justin, and we asked him about both Sam Darnold and JJ, and he said something along the lines of, he's a rookie, he's learning about when you need to throw at 90 miles an hour and when you don't. And it turns out like that was kind of just the way he plays, and he's going to have to make that significant shift. And so that's and whether he has done that or not, like to me, watching the OTAs, like that was maybe the biggest difference between Kyler and JJ, is seeing how Kyler did that versus how JJ is still kind of throwing things on a line to a much greater extent. And Kyler really seems to, while he has a very strong arm, seems to have a very good sense for layering and getting, different velocities for different types of routes. And so that was notable to me. And people going into last year, everybody thought, well, you have these great receivers and they can make up for that. Like if he doesn't throw it perfectly every time. And what it was sort of happened was the reverse. Like they became worse pass catchers. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, their drop rate was much, much, much higher last year than it was in any given other year. And so you might say, well, they let JJ McCarthy down, or you could argue that if it's happening to all three of them, he threw a ball that was just much more difficult to catch.
I also recall being in London. That was a journey in itself, but I remember Carson Wentz played that game, and there were a couple like downfield throws that definitely Justin Jefferson had to go up and make to catch for Carson Wentz that
he did.
And he did. And for me, and that's where I asked the question, as not the expert on playing quarterback or receiver, of like, what is it, just catchability? Is it, to your point, the touch and ability to put air under passes? And that's where I think, we saw a little bit this spring, or I'd say I personally was looking forward a little bit this spring. And I'd say over the next couple weeks in training camp, like me trying to identify growth in that area is going to be one of, for me, just top of mind and top of the priority list as I'm trying to evaluate, as much as the competition, just trying to evaluate JJ McCarthy's growth at 23.
It is. And there'll be, the interesting is he could, and I've been saying this, like he could grow a lot there and still the gap between him and Kyler might not be close enough for it to matter, because there's a long way to go there. And that's just a fact. And we'll see how Kyler reacts on pressure situations, which we didn't see much of in OTAs because there aren't many, but, when left to throw against air, like to me, there wasn't much difference, or there wasn't much similar. It was a big difference between how those two guys throw the ball under ideal conditions.
Yeah, I spent time with our colleague Dave Mizutani. We were talking about the difficulty in evaluation when you toss in the Brian Flores layer of it all defensively. And I think this is one of those things that's really hard to, at least from my perch, discern, like, you know, the defense is dominating on a certain day in training camp. How much of that is a byproduct of Brian Flores and the defense calling things that either weren't expected or are way beyond what should be called in a first week and week 2 of training camp? And so part of the, I'd say the question would be like, how much of a layer does that inject for you as you are trying to evaluate both guys on a daily basis?
I mean, it definitely is part of, and what I will try to make my own approach, and I'm sure everybody will, is to like not overreact to what you see in the very moment. I mean, sometimes your eyes just tell you the obvious things, and like if a guy, bounces a ball, 5 yards in front of somebody, like that's not good. But absent of that, there are a lot that gives you the opportunity to ask questions and find out either in press conferences or behind the scenes, like what was really going on there. And was that just poor quarterback play? Did the receivers run the wrong routes? Did, bad match of a play call? Or, and we know this happens sometimes, like, was there an intentional match of a play that shouldn't work against the defense that's coming? Because in theory, it's all planned out. And so Kevin O'Connell should know what defense, Brian Flores is going to run on any given rep. And because Kevin O'Connell said it, I think during the spring, like one of the things he wants in response to the Flores angle is like, one of the things he wants to evaluate is what do these guys do in difficult situations? How do they handle the adversity? Obviously, Kyler Murray has the scramble ability. You don't like to see that too much in training camp just because there's usually an answer somewhere in the passing game, even if it means throwing it away. But usually the way O'Connell's schemes run, there's an answer to throw somewhere where there's it's an acceptable answer. And how many times can he make that throw versus pull it down and just kind of scramble and end the play? And so that's something to evaluate too. And to me, something to watch, especially for Kyler, how many of those reps end with him just pulling the ball down and running. And that's the end of a practice rep. Like there's nobody trying to tackle him in those situations. That's where JJ McCarthy should have his biggest advantage, is this is year 3 of him being in this scheme. Like he should, and it doesn't mean you have to everything, perfectly, but he should have an advantage in terms of knowing where to go, what the answers are, what the decision-making tree is, and executing that. And, to me, the biggest sign of a Kyler Murray struggle will be like him not being able to figure out where to throw the ball.
Yeah, and it could be, pre-snap operation. It could be when Flores is lining up seemingly all 11 guys in the line of scrimmage. Like, are you blocking it up, or are you just like, being the escape artist that you can be? And I do think, for me, and you mentioned this, but like the personal part of it, of covering it, becomes difficult when it is Kyler Murray tucked the ball down and run. Was there a receiver open? I don't get the practice tape afterwards to kind of flip back through. So those can become challenging. This is more like inside baseball from a reporting standpoint, but like those can become challenging reps for me personally to draw opinions on or observations over, because you don't know the intent, but B, I don't get to see in the aftermath after the 3-second, split second, snap and rep, who was open if the receiver angled the correct way. And that's somewhat of like the challenge that will be on my mind next Wednesday when we're out there.
We need them to set up one of those big replay screens. Like they have people, if you've been to training camp, you've seen that and the Vikings aren't the only team, but they have these massive TV banks that create one big replay so that if you're a player or a coach on the practice field, you can go through the rep and then immediately look up and see what happened. Did they get blocked up right? Was this guy open? What coverage was it? All that kind of stuff. And it's this immediate feedback loop that's great. And I would love to have one of those too, but usually we're stuck on the other side of it and just see the back and the wire is coming out. But if they have one of those for us, that would be outstanding. I would even trade that for maybe the water that they put out for us. Less water, more replays.
Yeah, first press conference next week. Hey, Kevin, is it possible to angle one of those?
We're going to go ahead and need you to swivel that thing for us. Yeah.
And he, I'm sure, would be very malleable to doing that.
He wants to have accurate reporting.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah. I mean, the rep counting needs to be coincided with the post-snap.
Well, that's the other thing. Are we going to be so busy keeping track of who's on the field that we didn't see what happened after the snap? But we'll wait on that one.
The one thing that is tangentially related to the quarterback play that I don't think ever probably gets talked about as much as it should is the offensive line play. And this is a very general probably topic, but I'm wondering how you feel just about this offensive line and what they've constructed with obviously Donovan Jackson coming into his second year off of what I thought was a pretty solid rookie season. Christian Darrisaw's availability, that's, obviously a major topic of conversation. Brian O'Neill at right tackle entering the final year of his contract. Will Fries played every game last year. And then Blake Brandell at center, which, he's barely played in his career. First played it last year, I believe, in that London game against the Browns. Just offensive line play for whoever's back there is going to be essential. How do you feel about it is really the question. A quick word from two more of our sponsors. First, great clips. If you got kids, back to school season is a lot. Supply list, shoe shopping, juggling all the schedules. It is not exactly a magical time of year. The Great Clips app, though, that really does work like magic. With just a few taps, you can find a salon nearby, see the wait time, and check in when it works for you. You can even get a message when it's your turn, so you know when to pack up the kids and head over. Oh, and the savings. That's where the real magic happens. So when it's time for back-to-school haircuts, download the Great Clips app. It may not take care of all your back-to-school to-dos, but it'll definitely make some of the stress disappear. Great Clips. It's going to be great. Also want to mention the folks over at Aquarius Home Services, your independent, authorized Connecticut dealer. It's summer. Yes, it's still summer, and that means home improvement season. At Aquarius, they know that managing a household and all of the expenses that come with it is no easy task. They also know how important having worry-free water in your home is. Your family deserves water you can trust. Connecticut as a water system is a game changer. You really don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about contaminants like forever chemicals. You don't have to worry about hard water, rusty water, nitrates, lead, or arsenic. And they also have a trade-in and trade-up program that allows you to trade in your old water softener and trade up to a Connecticut, whole home water treatment system. Please check out Aquarius Home Services and ensure that you have as good a water system as you can possibly have. With that, let's get back to our conversation with Kevin Seifert of ESPN.
I feel like there's more questions about him than you would want or expect from a veteran line. Like, you just named the five guys, they're all returning starters, and not one of them can, you say like they're they had a great year last year and they're established for the long term at that position. You could say Donovan Jackson had a really good rookie year, but are you certain,
he was injured.
He was injured. Was that his ceiling though? Or is he going to get better? Like, was he just really ready to play at a certain level in the NFL and that's just where he's going to be? You mentioned Darrisaw. We don't know. We hope I mean, the Vikings hope he's going to be a full-time player, but is he going to be a full-time practice player? Is this knee thing going to be something that hampers him throughout? Brian O'Neill, contract or not, is on the other side of 30, and so you just start thinking about that. Blake Brandel was an emergency center last year, and did well in that as an emergency center. You say, and so you look at it as they didn't have literally anyone else on the roster who could do it. They had an entire offseason, and he's still there. And so that to me is still a big question mark. And Will Fries, the great thing about him is he played every snap. I think it was pretty much every snap, if not every snap last year. Did he play really well? As a guy with a 5-year, $88 million contract, I think you could find people to tell you that no, at least not for good stretches of the season. And so for me, for being a veteran line of returning guys, like that's more questions than you would like to see. But it's also notable that they cycled out the coach. They have a new offensive line coach in Keith Carter, and I'm sure Frank Smith will be heavily involved, the assistant head coach in the offensive line as well. So there was a recognition that like there's some work to do here. But if you just when you just asked me like what my overall feeling is, that's what jumps out to me is that for a returning veteran line, there's more questions than you would think.
Yeah. And I mean, it was interesting. I remember being in the locker room in London on the hillside of Ware, England, and like Blake Brandel being like, I've never played center in a game. And you're just like, okay. And I know there have been people, I mean, and this, we attend every press conference, like, Wes Phillips has been the Vikings offensive coordinator has been very positive about Blake Brandel's versatility for a long time. For me, there is somewhat of a, leap to go from positive, versatile backup to starting center, especially if Kyler Murray's the starter. You talk to people around Kyler and spent time around him, like they will talk about interior pass protection being absolutely critical for him and perhaps more important than edge, protection because of his athleticism and versatility. So it's not something I've done a lot of, thought a lot about, but I would not be surprised if there is a positive regression from a health standpoint, first and foremost. I mean, they had 17 different combinations of guys who played at least 10 snaps. So if you chisel that down, I think that's going to help. But I don't think you can, in my opinion, I don't think you can overstate the importance of that group to being tangentially related to whoever's playing quarterback and the success of the offense.
And that's true every year for every team of every, but this is especially the case given the questions that we've discussed, the acknowledgement that the Vikings made in terms of needing to get better play. I mean, I think we can discern that's the reason that they have a new offensive line coach this year. And so, it's especially true for them. And even talking about the center, and like, I know, there'll be plenty of Kyler Murray height jokes that, we talked about the national thing and like that'll happen. And this is not a height joke. It's just a reality. You've got Blake Brandel is 6'7", he's got a 6'7" center and a quarterback who's 5'10". And so like, that's just, you can say that means nothing, or you could say it means something, but centers aren't usually nearly that tall.
Yeah, and for example, Micah Parsons late in the season is lined up head over Blake Brandel, and he shoves him back into Kyler Murray's lap, like he's going to have to adapt, and the rhythm and timing of the passing game will be affected by that. So I think, it's something that we will obviously monitor. The last thing for me, and it'll be on the quarterback because it is, this is how it is. Like, how long do you think the reps have to be even? Like, how long does that have to happen for you to get to a point of being like, man, offensively, it's somewhat, I don't know if risk is the right word, but it's bold probably to prepare the offense the way that it needs to be prepared coming out of the gates against the Green Bay Packers. Like that's, for me, it's a conversation I do think is really interesting in this era of practice time, rep allocation. Like I think there are a lot of layers to it that matter. Yeah.
So I've been thinking about that a lot. And number one, like Kevin O'Connell has never said there would be equal reps. Like he's sort of teased us about rep counting and all that, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be like 50-50. It felt 50-50 during the OTAs, but and that's, I don't know that it's not going to be, but like, I also don't think that like, if it's 60-40 that that would be a shock either if that's the way it ends up being. And it's hard to also keep it exactly a 50-50 in the heat of a practice each day when things change. But to me, the more I've thought about it, the turning point, like for me, is that Ravens joint practice. Which is what, August 19th, 20th, somewhere 20th. Around there. Yep. And then they have a preseason game after that. There's two ways that could go. One is, and we know Kevin O'Connell puts so much importance into those. And it's not lip service. Like, he has always wanted to plan one of these out. He aggressively goes out and finds whoever's going to be willing to come here and do that to be their preseason, because teams can schedule their preseason games. And he, talking to us, puts a lot of emphasis on it, talking to the team behind the scenes. So it's legitimately important. So you could look at it as like, he may not want the two ways. He may not want to make a decision until he sees both of those guys in that. But if it's that close, that far in, I don't know that that's a great sign. Probably. I mean, you would hope that if there's a quarterback on the roster that's going to lead them to the playoffs, that person will demonstrate themselves pretty early in camp. Because the other side of it is, wouldn't it be great to already know your starter by that point and have that person take all the first team reps against the Ravens defense for 2 straight days, or however they set that up, and let that person get the full advantage of what you acknowledge are the 2 most important days of camp. If they are still competing, unless they're both lights out and you can't decide who it's going to be, and maybe there's a possibility of that.
Brian Flores would love that, I'm sure.
Yes. Brian Flores will make sure they're not both lights out. But if they're still competing and they have to share reps against the Ravens, then I, at least as I sit here right now, I would consider that not a great sign. So I think that they ideally would love to be able to have whoever their week 1 starter is going to be, take all the first team reps in those Ravens joint practices.
Yeah, and it's what I've talked, that timing has been mostly what I've mentioned really just because of the emphasis that you talked about with how Kevin O'Connell views those days as important. And I also, I've said this and I really believe it. I do think it's important this year that exiting training camp, that the offense feels good about itself entering that week 1 game. And I don't know if necessarily, I can recall conversations last year in training camp in my mind of Ryan Kelly being like, yeah, the defense looks really good and we're getting it together. And TJ, I just feel like, as hard as it's going to be against this defense that is being as deceptive as you're going to see this time of year, to come out of this thing feeling good about it, about that unit and that side of the ball, I think is going to be critical.
Yes. I will also say that it's important, and maybe more important for their win-loss record, that the defense feels great coming out, because defense has won them a lot of games the past few years. And people always say, why does Kevin O'Connell let Brian Flores do this and wreck the whole training camp? And I'm not sure that is quite the way it is, but look, that's how Brian Flores gets the defense ready. It's a mentality. It's a psychological mentality that we're going to attack every rep. And the first day we attack is not going to be week 1. We're going to attack whoever we're facing. And I think that's a mentality that he needs training camp to develop, as much as an offense needs training camp to develop their mentality. And so it's an interesting kind of juxtaposition, because there's so much emphasis on the quarterback competition and making sure Justin Jefferson's happy and making sure Kevin O'Connell's scheme works, that you forget that a lot of these games that they've won recently and are going to want to win this year are going to be because their defense has been great. And that part of it can't be sacrificed in service of a quarterback competition.
Yeah. And it's a reminder of myself. It's like I personally, you'll silo the quarterback competition, but there are all these competing, or not competing, or all of these layers that are involved with all of it. So I'm looking forward to being out there. I will get sunburnt very quickly. I know you've molded new apparatuses for to stand out there. Hopefully we've got the perch out there because that's what the fans care about is if the media gets their perch. But
yes, I will push hard for that in my final moments as the president of the Pro Football Writers Association chapter of Minnesota.
I'd expect nothing less.
We'll make sure we get that. I'll have my bucket hat. I'll
sure.
be preventing sunburn at all costs.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for hopping on.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Always fun. Enjoy the last weekend before this.
Yeah. You too.
Thanks, Kim.
You too.
And that'll do it for episode 185 of the Alec Lewis Show. Appreciate you guys being here. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you're new watching on YouTube, hopefully hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, you can follow us over there. I'm going to have a ton of shows next week. We might do 3. I mean, perhaps even an additional one. And it's all sorts of them. We'll do some guests. We'll go with some reaction probably to some early scenes of training camp. So please stay locked into the feeds. It's going to be fun ramping up here. And then I will just end it with been grinding on a ton of stories at The Athletic. The first will be up by the time this is posted on Dennis Ryan, longtime equipment manager. And then when you come back next week, I mean, we're talking daily stories. Monday, I'll have 46 thoughts on the 46 defenders / special teamers, including Brett Thorson, the undrafted rookie punter. Tuesday, Wednesday, we've got some stuff planned that I've been working on for months. So if you made it this far, hopefully that tease pays off next week, and we will see you then. Thank you guys for being here. Talk to you very, very soon.